Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. My name is Todd Nesloney, elementary school principal and author of the book Stories from Web that the whole series is based after. My goal each week is to bring you someone that has inspired me with their story or their journey or what they bring to this world and then show them off to you. So I am thrilled this week to bring my special guest, Rachelle Smith. Rachelle, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me, Todd. I'm really excited.
So for those who may not know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Rachelle. I teach in the suburb of Salt Lake City, and this is my 11th year teaching elementary school. I teach first grade. I am currently in the master's program to become an educational leader one day, so maybe a principal like yourself. And I also am an co-author of the blog What the Teacher Wants, and kind of started about 8 years ago posting on our blog there, and it's kind of evolved into this social media outreach and just basically teaching teachers and really building a sense of community.
So, you and I were talking a little bit before the show went live about you mentioned you're pursuing your administrative certificate and all that kind of stuff. And you were telling me you're actually in an internship where even though you're working at an elementary school, part of your observation has to be at a secondary school, right?
Right. So I am a full-time teacher in first grade, but my program requires me to get 200 internship hours in an elementary school as an administrative intern, and then 200 in a secondary school, could be middle or high school. Well, I'm in a high school, so I am out of my comfort zone completely, but the faculty and staff and the administrators at this high school are top-notch, and so today was my first day, and I've already learned a lot.
I can just imagine the amount of things that I'm thinking of myself that I would be learning at a secondary school because I've just had my whole experience in elementary. So that's got to be such a neat thing to just kind of get a glimpse of that other realm without having to be thrown in it full time every day.
Right. It's nice to kind of shadow the administrators. I basically follow them around like a little lost puppy, just kind of soaking in all that I can. Because I could have the opportunity to be an elementary school principal, or I could have the opportunity to be a middle or high school principal as well. So to get that experience is really, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned you've taught first grade for 11 years now. So did you always know you wanted to be a teacher?
Yeah, you know what? Growing up, I wanted to be a singer, but I definitely could not sing. And my sister told me, she's like, "You're not Mariah Carey." So since I couldn't be a singer, it was my fallback career. When I was in high school, I job shadowed at a preschool that was actually in the neighborhood that I lived in. And I was able to kind of see how just the relationships she built with these little, 4 and 5-year-olds. And I loved that. I loved how creative everything was. And these kids love to come to school every day and learn, even though it was for just a few hours. So I knew I wanted to be in education in some capacity. And then through my program in college, I immediately decided I want to be a teacher. And I really loved the young kids. I minored in early childhood education. And so my heart is where the students are learning to read, and that's first grade.
That's awesome. Now, you haven't been at the same school the whole 11 years, though, right?
I haven't. I worked at a school right out of my student teaching. I got hired on at a school, and then I helped open up a school that I'm at right now that's a new school in the area. And this is our 5th year open. So.
Awesome. So what do you think is probably the biggest unexpected lesson you learned through just becoming a teacher?
I think unexpected is that you make a million little decisions every day. Mm-hmm. I think oftentimes we feel like, oh, teachers are told what to do. You have to do this, this, and this. And I feel like, I don't know, I have made a lot of decisions throughout my day. It's just a full 8 hours of deciding what to do. And I think that can become overwhelming, but the more experience you get, the quicker you get. And I've really loved the aspect that it changes as well. So not every day is the same, and year to year isn't the same. Even though I've taught first grade for 11 years, I can tell you I've never done the same thing each lesson is different. Each year is different. I like to change this and add this, and your classes are different as well. So although I've taught the same grade for 11 years, I have a new experience every day.
Right. So, and you mentioned, you also started a platform called What the Teacher Wants.
Yeah.
And talk to me about how that came about and who you're doing it with.
Yeah, so about 8 years ago, I would say. Yeah, I was only 2.5 years in teaching, and I was newlywed, and I had blogs were like this thing. And so I started a family blog so that people could keep up with my husband and I. So I would write, vacations we went on and pictures of us. No one read it really, but what I mostly shared were pictures and ideas from my classroom. And what I noticed is my family blog was becoming a blog to share my teaching ideas. So I thought that maybe I could just separate the two. So I started What the Teacher Wants just on a limb. I made my own layout. I wrote my own blog post. My first blog post was about how to get your glue unclogged. And let's just say that I've evolved over the years. But I started writing on this blog, and my friend who I went to college with said, "Hey, I'd love to guest post on your blog and give you some ideas," because she was a 5th grade teacher at the time. And we were great friends in college and after college. And I said, absolutely. And then she wrote a great blog post. I said, let's just co-author this blog. Let's share it. And we did. And that's Natalie. And really, she's the yin to my yang.
So what has been the best part of running that now for over 8 years?
The connections that I've made with teachers around the world, really. I mean, those relationships are so valuable to me. Some people I've met in real life, and now they're my in real life friends. We always like to say, like, we're just blogging friends or Instagram friends, but we've built relationships, and we send each other Christmas cards, and we're real friends. But also the teachers, I'm able to touch lives in around the world with different teachers and their students, and then the next year their students. And so it kind of is this evolving spread of love, I guess.
And I think that's so true because, getting started on social media, at least for me, was so scary because I thought, what do I have to say? Like, is anybody even going to listen? This is so weird. And then it's like I'm interacting with all these strangers and pretending like I know them. And then I go and meet them in real life. And it's like, oh, please be as cool as you are online. And then when they are,
when I met you,
best friends right away because we already had that relationship online. And it's such a weird thing to explain to people who haven't been through it. But I'm sure you've experienced the same thing, right?
Absolutely. It's like, I feel like I know these people. We share so much of our lives and a lot in our classrooms. And some teachers, like myself with my story that I'm going to share tonight, I've decided to share my personal life with the world too. So, that's how much trust I put into this teaching community, this social media teachers, the social media teachers out there. I trust you with my personal relationship because I feel like I don't want you to feel alone. I want to share my story. And I think that's what I love about what you're doing here is all of these teachers are sharing their stories in one way or another.
Right. Now, you're mentioning the sharing the story, throughout all the things you've shared on your blog throughout the years, when you were getting this whole thing started, were you nervous that this was just a crazy idea that would anybody even care about? Or like, were you afraid at first to share some of these things?
Yes, because my husband and I didn't tell anyone what was going on in our personal life. And so we kind of started to unravel it. It felt safer. The more we told, the safer it felt. And so I decided one day I was just going to share this story with the world, and with my husband's approval, of course, because we make those sort of decisions together. I shared it out, and I definitely was scared. But I knew that I was going to have a lot of support. I didn't realize the outpouring of actual teachers that are going through the same thing that my husband and I are going through. I think it's a very, it's a unique situation, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it soon.
Well, I've been following you on social media, and I've gotten to know you a little bit through the Get Your Teach On conference and things like that. But when I read that post that you wrote, the vulnerability and the honesty that exuded from that, it was so refreshing just to see someone walk through something so openly, not because they have the answers, not because they are telling everyone how they should deal with something, but just saying, hey, you know what? I'm going through this and I know there are others too, and you're not alone. And it was incredibly powerful. So let's talk about that. Tell everybody about the posts where we're talking around.
I know. I like haven't mentioned it. If I was like, I know it's coming. So, it was the end of December, and I'm not quite sure to pinpoint where it was, but I saw an Instagram post. I'm pretty sure, and it said something about let 2019 be your year to speak your truth. And it really hit me because I don't feel like I've been speaking my truth because I just felt really alone, and we felt really, I mean, my husband and I both felt like shame around it. So I decided to write this post in 2019 titled Dear Infertile Teacher. And the post is about my journey specifically, left my husband out of it, although it is both of our journeys, but my journey as a teacher that's infertile. Because I think oftentimes people just assume, oh, you've got, people say to me, do you have any children? Just today at the dentist, someone said, oh, do you have any children? I said, no. And they said, well, you're a teacher, you have plenty of children. We're in the classroom loving on babies when we're yearning for children of our own. So I think teachers are in a very vulnerable state when they're infertile because, we spend the day with other people's children. We really want to have our own.
Yeah. And, there was a lot of things you shared in there that I so agreed with and loved your perspective throughout it. Because, one of the struggles, of course, through this is the constant question of, oh, when are you having kids or anything like that? So, talk to me about like how you work through and deal with those kind of questions or offhanded comments or things like that.
So for years, my husband and I did a really good job at just saying, we're not ready for kids. That was the easy thing for us to do because it closed the door right away, and people respected that. They were like, oh, okay, absolutely. When you're ready, you do that. But that was a complete lie. It was just that we took the easy road with that. And then more recently, we've decided to be more open because it feels like we're living our truth. So when people ask me, people in my life, when they ask me, I talk to them about the struggles, and I just say, right now we're going through infertility treatments, and, we would love your thoughts and prayers at this time. People that I don't know, sometimes I can get snarky, like, well, if you have $25,000 you want to help.
Yeah.
Or I think I mentioned that in the post. Sometimes I want to say that, I don't. But it's difficult. It stings, but it gets easier as we start sharing our story.
So walk me through a little bit of the journey. So, of course, you and your husband get married. Y'all just at some point you decide you want to start having kids. How did all of that play out for y'all?
Yeah, so we got married almost 10 years ago, and we live in the culture here is that when you get married, you have children. And really, that wasn't who we were. We were both new in our careers, and my blog was sort of taking off, and I went through this big fitness journey and lost 100 pounds. And so people thought, oh, well, you don't want to have kids, you'll gain weight. And so I laughed that off. Haha, yeah, that's the reason, and as years went by, we really felt like we were missing something in our family. And we knew that we really wanted to have children. And there's so many acronyms in the infertility world. TTC is trying to conceive, and we did that for years. And just wasn't working. So we thought, we probably should go see a doctor. We did. And, the doctor has basically said that we are both worst case scenario for having children. And at first that can be so heartbreaking. But I think sharing with others, sharing this post, I've seen so many stories and heard so many stories from women, especially teachers, about their journey in infertility, and whether it, ended in adoption or the IVF process, whatever it might be. People are so willing to share their story, and it gives my husband and I a lot of hope.
So when you and your husband had that conversation with the doctor and got that news, one of the things that comes to my head is, at some point you are going to talk with family about it, or at least your parents or somebody like that. How do you even begin to have that conversation with those that are closest to you? Because part of me thinks you'd want to hold it in because it's so personal. But the other part of me thinks it's like, I need to tell someone I love and that I care about that they can walk alongside of me with this. So how did you approach that with somebody to lighten your own load?
That is something that I feel I don't ever want someone to share their story when they're not ready, but that is a huge piece of advice I have people that are going through infertility or any sort of struggle, is share it with someone. And my husband and I can share back and forth, and we can do that. But I feel like once we included our family in that, it was a weight off of my shoulders where my mom wasn't constantly wondering, when am I going to have grandbabies and that kind of thing. So we shared with my family pretty, not early on, we kept it for years, but when we started going through the infertility treatments, that's when we knew we had to share with our family. And so we did, and they're so supportive and only ask questions when prompted to do so. They're not constantly digging in, and you have to set boundaries. And with my family, I've been so grateful, and my friends as well. I haven't had to say, hey, that's a no, please stop asking. So, but my advice to other people out there that haven't shared their journey, but like to, set those boundaries and say, we have a doctor's appointment next month. I'll let you know how it goes when we get there.
You talk about sharing this with the family. Did you ever have a fear of judgment or anything like that before you shared it with them? Because I know you talk about how they're so supportive, but did you have that, because we all have those crazy fears before we tell anyone stuff. Did you face that as well?
No, not really. I just, I think as long as I had my husband's support and we together were going on it, I knew that my family and our families, his family as well, would be supportive and really just be there for us. And that's what I found. And I know that's not the same in every family. Right. And I know some people have to be very cautious, but it was just as simple as, hey, Mom, I need to know some of your medical history, because when I bring it to my doctor, they want to know my mom's history as well, because we're trying to have children. And she was very like, okay, is everything okay? And then that was where it ended, and then she'll ask me periodically, have you seen the doctor? And so it's very, I feel like it's a safe place.
Now, how long between you and your husband finding out that information did y'all take to make the decision to pursue infertility treatments?
So it was sort of right away, because we had been trying on our own for so long that it was like, we felt like, well, first of all, you feel like failures. You feel like something's wrong with you. You're broken. And now you have to go see a doctor and pay tons of money, because unfortunately, where I live and where I work, our insurance doesn't cover hardly anything. And so we knew we wanted to get started right away. My husband is a little bit older than I am, and so he's feeling like, hey, when we have kids, I don't want to be unable to attend their high school graduation or their college graduation. So it kind of felt very time crunched for us. And so we decided right away to start whatever we could to get kind of the ball rolling. The problem with infertility is that it is never a rushed thing. There's always, they want to take their time to get it right. And so we feel kind of stuck in the muck a little bit right now.
Of course. And thinking about writing this post, when did you decide that this was something that you needed? I know you mentioned ending 2018 and hearing that. Was that just the precipice for going, I need to write about this? Yeah,
I know that I knew that there were a lot of people out there that are suffering alone, because I was suffering alone. And so if I can imagine, and I share so much of my life. I mean, you've seen my Instagram. I'm constantly posting about everything. I will talk about anything, but that personal pain of infertility, the shame that comes with it, really a lot of it comes from you're not sure what to share, because you know that there's not big milestones in infertility. There's not many celebrations.
Right.
So it feels like you share it and then what? So I just decided, you know what, maybe I can help someone else open up, because I've seen just by sharing with my friends and my close friends and my family about this struggle, it's opened up my heart, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured, if I can share this with the teaching community, because like I said before, it's very, it's a niche, because it's like teachers that are infertile have this sort of battle of missing school and getting a sub and being away from their classroom, but trying to have kids of their own. And there's this whole process. I just felt I wanted to reach out to those teachers, and boy, did that happen.
Well, and it's funny because you mentioned it earlier, and I think you mentioned it in the post as well, as even people making that comment of, oh, well, you have your own classroom set of kids every day that you get to go to, and trying to find ways to ease that and say those kind of comments. But, has there been anything over the last month since you released the post that came unexpectedly, or that you weren't prepared to feel the amount of feedback or something from sharing that? Has any of that happened?
Randomly, a few days after I posted, I had this gift basket on my desk at school, and it was just all of these like goodies and like fuzzy socks and my favorite drinks and my favorite snacks, and a thing that just said like, "You got this." And it didn't say who it was from. It was just like a general gift of love. And like, I was just like, marched down to the office and I said, "Who brought this? I want to know who brought this." And they were like, "They asked not to be." And I have narrowed it down to being a parent of one of my students, actually. I have a few parents that follow my Instagram, which I love, because, I just love the whole community. And so I think it was a parent of one of my students, and that just, they know how much I love their kids, and they constantly, they say things like, "You're going to be such a great mom one day." And those things make me smile, but they pain me at the same time. So this parent reached out, and that was something that was very surprising, is the support from everyone, not just other teachers that were infertile, but from the community as a whole.
You exude such confidence and strength in the midst of something that I know is so personal, and is a daily battle, I'm sure. How do you maintain this positive outlook, or this, I've got this, when I'm sure there's many days you're like, this is never going to get anywhere, or why is this happening to me, or all these, because I know a comment that I hear teachers make all the time is, how come there are parents who don't even want kids that can have kid after kid after kid, and then I want one so badly. And all those things have to eat at you too. How do you hold it together and keep moving forward?
I just have faith that it's going to work out. There are a lot of people, myself included, that are just praying for this to happen. And we know, my husband and I know, that it will work out. We really do. And I mean, he's the reason why I am sitting up as tall as I am. He literally holds me up and is the one that's like, this is going to happen. He keeps saying 2019 is going to happen. Well, we just went to the doctor a couple of days ago. I don't think it's going to happen in 2019, but we just take what we can get. I just think the support that I've gotten from my husband, Brian, he's the rock in this family. And my family has been so supportive. My friends are incredible. I think an important thing too, as a teacher that's going through this, talk to your administrator. I didn't tell my administrator at first, and I was going to doctor's appointments and getting subs and leaving early, and people were covering for me. And it's a whole thing that infertile teachers or teachers that are ill really find difficult, because doctor's appointments don't come at the end of the day. Of course, they're right in the middle of the day, and someone's going to come cover my class for 45 minutes. So I told my administrator, and I can't tell you how supportive he was. Before we started, we were talking before we started filming about my principal, and just how incredible and supportive he really is. And that helped a lot. Tell your administrator. And I literally just poured it out to him. I said, "Listen, husband and I are trying to have a baby and we're going to have to use science. And he knew exactly what I said. And he was like, you tell me what you need and I will offer as much support as I can within the school. If we need to get you subs, whatever we need to do. And that's helpful.
That's incredible. That I'm so thankful that you get to have that kind of support. If there are teachers listening today who may be struggling with this same thing, but they are not quite to the place emotionally that maybe you and your husband are, what advice would you have for them besides, I mean, we've given some great advice today, or you have, about, letting in some family and friends when you're ready and having them help carry the load, or even letting in your administrator know if you're going to be needing to go to appointments or things. But what would be some advice, some words of wisdom that you would give from your own journey?
The best piece of advice that I have is take it one day at a time. I think when you look too far ahead, it becomes overwhelming. Like, well, what if we have to do this? And what if we have to come up with this money? And what if we have to miss this many days of school or work? I think when we just focus on today, what am I doing today? What sort of things am I doing for self-care, or what things are we doing together to keep our mind off of things, or what's our next appointment, but not looking so far ahead. Taking it one day at a time is very important on this fertility journey.
That's great advice. And on the other flip coin of that, say that you have friends or family or other teachers who know somebody who's struggling with this. Being an educator and a woman who's struggling this with yourself, what advice do you give to those of how they can best be supportive?
There are so many options out there, but for one, you got to take care of your mental health. Seeking therapy, going to support groups. It's not okay to keep it in. It really will just eat at you. You've got to talk to someone. You've got to be able to, and talking to your spouse is really important and great, but sometimes it's like the blind leading the blind. We're both a mess about it. We both want to have kids. We both are, so I'm very open about going to therapy, and I'm also in a support group for infertility, and that's been very beneficial. All of this stems from sharing your story, whether you share it with your followers on Instagram. That you don't have to do that, but share it with someone.
And for those others who aren't dealing with this, but they know somebody who is, how can they support a fellow friend who's dealing with infertility?
Was that your question?
Well, it was, but I loved your answer so much. I was like, no, I'm going to hear it again.
Teachers have the hardest time listening. Okay. So the best way to support is just being there. Really, I have friends who just send me a text. Hey, how are you doing? What do you need? You just gotta be there without, where the boundaries are as well. I think that oftentimes my friends don't really know how to ask, like, what's going on? And it's okay. For me, it feels okay. It's a safe place. They can ask me, hey, what's the news lately? Right. I like that they're still kind of in it and remembering that my husband and I are still going through this, even though we're not talking about it all the time, because infertility can be a very long journey, years and years and years. And so you don't want to be forgotten. So I think that those friends and the connections that you have, really just make sure they know you're there.
And I think that's so important what you just said, because I remember I have a close friend of mine who they lost a child right before birth. So about 8 months pregnant, she lost her baby. And months later, we were talking about it, me and the father. And he said, you know what the hardest part is? He said, everybody's there when they find out what you're going through. He said, but the hardest part is when people forget that you went through something and nobody ever asks anymore how things are going. He said, because then it's like, it didn't matter anymore. And he said, and to me, I wake up every day and it still matters to me. And I just want to know that somebody's still caring enough to ask me how I'm dealing with it, even when you haven't seen a glimpse of it in my life for weeks. I still am seeing it every day when I wake up and look in the mirror. And so I think that's great advice that you just gave about just continue to check in with those around you and see how that is. So if there's one lesson, Rachelle, that you feel like you have learned the most in the last decade, 10 years, what do you think is the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself in the last 10 years?
I think the biggest thing is that I'm enough. I think that for so long I strive to be a certain teacher, a certain person, a certain, a mother, but I'm perfectly enough just how I am. And I think that when we start to accept ourselves the way that we are, I might feel broken, but I'm not broken. And although, maybe I won't be able to have biological children, maybe we'll be able to adopt, or there's other ways. So I think that right now I'm perfect the way that I am. And I just accepting yourself for being enough.
Well, Rachelle, I have to tell you, there's been so many great things that you've done that have inspired me. But when I read that post, it just gripped me with the honesty and vulnerability. And hearing you share today, you should be like a motivational speaker, because there's so many things that I'm sitting over here going, pay attention, don't take any notes right now, because there's things I want to write down that you said to share out. But I just admire you and your honesty and your brilliance and all the education stuff that you do as well. But just your vulnerability and your bravery to be able to share that, because I think that you won't even realize the amount of lives that you are giving hope to or touching just by sharing a piece of your story for those people who may not be brave enough to reach out to you to let you know the impact it made. But I think that your story is just more proof that when we are at that point that we can feel comfortable sharing it, that it really does impact people for the better. So thank you so much for coming on and being a guest.
You're incredible. I'll see you next month, right?
That's right. Well, actually, what is it, like 2 weeks?
Okay, well, I'm not ready, so let's just call it next month. It's in February. It's not February for like 2 more days.
That's right. So if people want to find you, Rachelle, where can they find you online?
You can find me on Instagram is my biggest platform that I'm most active. It's What the Teacher Wants on Instagram. You can find Natalie and I there. Same on Facebook and whattheteacherwantsblog.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you for everybody who was listening or watching today. I hope that you gained something great from another episode. And remember to get out there, be brave, and tell your story, because every story matters. Hope to see you again next week with another awesome guest.